A Deadly State of Mind starts out with a close-up of Leslie Ann Warren's face, which is the best way to start anything. She's playing Nadia Donner, who has been hypnotized as a form of therapy by her psychiatrist, Dr. Mark Collier. But he's not just been getting in her head, he's also been getting in her pants, lucky bastard. The two meet up at Nadia's beach house to bump uglies once again, but are disappointed to find her husband waiting for them. If I was Carl Donner, I don't know what I'd be more mad about. The fact that my wife was cheating on me, or that she was doing it with a man who wears 3 different layers of the exact same colored clothing. Looks like the clothing has done it, and Carl goes berserk. Go on, lad. Even Nadia gets some too. But in the end, Carl doesn't like the taste of his own medicine and goes and dies after Collier gives him a playful smack of a fire poker. Spoil sport. Mark quickly splits, very nearly mowing down a blind pedestrian in the process.
What's happened?
Nadia spins the police a tall tale about her husband being killed by 2 masked intruders. But Columbo doesn't buy that bullshit for 1 minute. Why did she claim to hear the killers drive away, but not hear their car arriving in the first place? How did she not even see their headlights coming up the driveway? And why, if the burglars were armed, like she claimed, did they not just shoot her husband rather than beating him to death? It's clear that culprit Collier has a 2-headed problem on his hands. A cop who won't stop asking questions, and an accomplice who seems ill-equipped to answer them.
I thought I'd mentioned that to you.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So Mark, a man of science and medicine, decides to do the honorable thing. Kill Nadia and frame her for the murder of her husband. He plants Carl's valuables, stolen from his body, in Nadia's apartment, then hypnotizes her, telling her that when she next hears his voice, she'll be overcome with a strong urge to go swimming.
Swimming?
Later that evening, he calls her on the phone, which triggers the final part of his plan. Nadia strips down to her bare arse, climbs over a balcony, and takes a high dive like she's on that one BBC game show that was about high diving. Unfortunately, we don't actually get to see Leslie Ann Warren naked in this scene, so I'm obligated to give this episode a 0 out of 10. George Hamilton was an excellent choice for a Columbo killer. Smooth, suave, and bad to the bone. He's tall, dark, and handsome with one glorious head of hair. It's easy to see why he was cast as Dracula only a few years later. Speaking of, I love this shot of Collier framed against the fireplace behind him, looking like the goddamn devil himself as he manipulates poor Nadia Donner into taking her final swim. Like many killers, he's supremely self-confident, smug, and condescending to our favorite lieutenant. It's clear Columbo doesn't like him at all, and seems to really enjoy rattling the doctor's cage and letting him know he's onto him.
Am I to presume that I'm currently your chief suspect?
I'm not sure the suspect is a strong enough word.
What I particularly like about Collier as a villain is that he puts his pride in his reputation before anything else. If he and Nadia had come clean to the police right away, they probably wouldn't have gone to jail. I mean, Carl was viciously assaulting both of them at the time. That's a pretty clear-cut case of self-defense. But of course, Collier's reputation would have suffered greatly as a result, and he just couldn't let that happen. So rather than do the right thing, he covered everything up, manipulated those around him, wasted police time, and ultimately killed another person, just so no one would know about his unethical behavior, which had started all this trouble in the first place. What an asshole.
I deny.
It's hard as a viewer then not to take some pleasure in the final scene, as I'm sure Columbo himself does when he finally nails the dastardly duck. The lieutenant admits he can't prove Collier killed Nadia. How could he, after all? It is an admittedly outrageous and far-fetched murder, even by Columbo standards, but he can prove he killed Carl. Bruce Kirby, in his second performance as Sergeant Kramer, has tracked down an eyewitness to Collier's hasty exit from the Donner driveway. Mr. Morris, the blind man who was nearly hit by the deadly doc's car. Get fucked, says Collier. That man is blind and can't have seen a damn thing. Thinking Columbo was trying to entrap him, Collier smugly asked the blind man to read from a magazine.
Always pack a bulky sweater and some heavy underwear.
Watch this, Lise. You can actually pinpoint the second when his heart rips in half. And now.
Then the real blind witness comes out. It turns out the man on the couch is his similar-looking brother. How could Collier have presumed the witness was blind unless he himself saw a blind man walking on the road that day? Well, probably because the guy looks like he's blind, but seeing that smarmy grin wiped off Hamilton's face will never not be satisfying.
But the eyewitness is not Mr. Morris. The eyewitness is you.
I must also applaud recurring bit player Fred Draper for his small role as the fake Mr. Morris. He looks even more chuffed with himself than Columbo does. I particularly love how much gusto Morris puts into his reading of the magazine.
Surely it is the most beautiful of all sports.
He knows he's playing the starring role in Columbo's little production, and he is loving every second of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A Deadly State of Mind is an episode I don't rewatch very often, but I found myself quite enjoying this time around. It's a fast-paced 70-minute affair that moves along quite nicely, and has a couple truly great moments sprinkled throughout. Chief amongst them is Columbo's confrontation with Collier's assistant, Dr. Anita Borden. He's trying to glean important information from her, but her flippant attitude rubs the lieutenant the wrong way. Cue an outburst.
I can't give you that kind of information, Lieutenant. You're just gonna have to ask Dr. Collier.
Now, I'm asking you. I'm asking you about a murder.
Columbo's explosions of anger in A Stitch in Crime and An Exercise in Fatality, which was this very same season,
What the hell are you doing?
are the more well-known instances of Columbo's emotions getting the better of him. This moment tends to fly a bit more under the radar, but it's just as good. Other highlights include Columbo crashing a party at Dr. Collier's house, where he gets chatting to some of the other guests. Their interactions are pretty funny.
You know something? I make a very good detective.
She's still an
Really, I am.
But look at the way Columbo keeps looking at Collier every time he explains another clue to the investigation. It's top-tier Columbo killer interplay. Oh, and I'd be remiss if I talked about this episode and didn't mention this moment.
He looks just like one of my junior editors.
We call her Willie.
Sorry, I don't have a Willie.
Poor bastard.
Sorry, I don't have a Willie.
What's up with this scene randomly being in slow-mo? One thing I do find odd about this episode is that, as the last episode of Season 4, it doesn't have much of a finale vibe. I feel like in the previous 3 seasons, the producers held off on the toughest case until the closing episode. Deadly State seems like it could just be any random episode from the middle of any random season. Troubled Waters, in my opinion, should have been the season finale, but that's a minor point. A Deadly State of Mind is a solid middle-of-the-table episode that gets the job done without being especially memorable overall, save for the gotcha and the presence of the sumptuous Leslie Ann Warren.
Must you please? I must.
Damn, were we spoiled with the babes in Season 4 or what? And hey, it's not like there wasn't plenty of eye candy for the ladies too. But for now, it's goodbye to Season 4. Join me again in hopefully less than 2 fucking years when I tackle Season 5. Seriously, I promise I'll try not to wait 2 years this time. Maybe only like a year and a half.